Okay, we are live, but we got to let it breathe just for a moment while we bring on the Facebookers. What would we do without the Facebookers? We got to get them in the room. It's going to be a fun night, lots to discuss, and we are almost just about good. Welcome in, everybody. It's Saturday, so you know what it means. It's orange and blue view time. I'm Chad Jensen. This guy right next to me here, you know him, you love him, Ron White. Ron, first and foremost, dude, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Chad. It's pretty good. Good weekend so far, and looking forward to Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
Again, it's kind of a slow news. I know we got the news on Will Lutz yesterday, but
yeah.
other than that, on the Broncos bye week, it's been pretty slow moving. It's good that the team has finally entered the bye week and getting some rest. So
What
it's
did
pretty
you
good for
make of
everybody.
the 3-year deal? I don't think the details of it have come out yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen the actual details of the extension, but I'm not surprised. I mean, Lutz is as clutch as they come. I thought he was well deserving of it. I think it's through 2028, I believe I read.
Yep, correct.
So yeah, well worth it. Curious to know kind of what some of the languages of the contract and kind of what those details are, but well, I think he's well deserved given how he's performed for the Broncos since he's arrived.
I'm guessing that it puts him, and I agree, by the way, well deserved. It's good to get that locked in now. Give him as much, with kicking being so much a between the ears kind of endeavor, very similar to like golf strokes, and like you're more competing against yourself than you are an actual opponent. So
Mhm.
locking him in and making him feel the love now, I think it was only good. They're good harbingers. It portends well for a playoff run. But he was making 6 million. We'll just call it 5.9 and change this season, which I want to say, if I recall right, and I wrote the article, so I think it ranked him ninth among kickers going into this season. I'm guessing the new deal probably puts him somewhere between the 6 and 7 range is my guess per year, but he's worth it, man. Just, remember you and I were there, Ron, that New York Giants game. Like, you need that ice in the veins kicker, and he doesn't have the biggest leg. It's not, Matt Prater. It's not Jason Elam. It's not even Brandon McManus, but he's consistent. And best of all, Ron, when the chips are down and you got to have that kick, he comes through.
Yeah, we've seen it time and time again. Again, not just the Giants game, but we've seen it in the Houston game. We
Yep.
saw it this past weekend against the Chiefs. So again, it's just so good that the Broncos got ahead of it to give him that extension. I'm happy for him, and again, hopefully, with this, give him more ammunition to go out there as they inch closer to this hopefully deep playoff run.
Makes you wonder. By the way, tonight, guys, we're going to be going through our position grades for the Broncos, being that we're at the bye. It's a good opportunity. We're also going to be talking and sharing our thoughts on the very illuminating Vance Joseph interview with Peter Schrager. But the Will Lutz deal, now that it's in the books, and again, I expect us to find out details on the numbers probably Monday
Hmm.
when he comes back to the building, signs the contract. Then the Broncos will probably start leaking that information out. But it makes me wonder, Ron, who could be possibly next for an in-season extension, because you've got a few guys who are kind of lingering out there as contract year players, whether it's Justin Sternad, I mean
Hmm.
Alex Singleton. I doubt
Hmm.
they extend Singleton right away, but Malcolm Roach. Who am I missing? Who else? Who else is?
JFM,
Yeah, that's right,
JFM.
JFM.
Hmm.
So if you were the Broncos, Ron, and you're deciding that in order of magnitude and priority, who would be next up on the desk of George Payton?
For me, it would be John Franklin Myers. Now I know, some people think the writing may be on the wall given they drafted Savion Jones
Right.
to come in and be that three tech to have it be replacement John Franklin Myers. But just given what, he's been not only this year, but even last year, ever since he's been in Denver, he's been a force on the defensive line. And I do think, Chad, maybe extending him like a few years,
Yep.
I think would be good. You kind of want to keep the core of the defense as much of it as you can,
Yeah.
because and we'll get to Vance Joseph's comments here shortly, but as he mentioned, they built this team, um, especially on the D line, well, the whole defense, but especially on that D line, to go toe to toe with teams like the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
And you kind of want to have it, obviously, not only for now, but that Super Bowl window, I'm thinking up until about 2029, you kind of want to keep the core intact as much as possible. So for me, it would be John Franklin Myers. I think the Malcolm Roach deal you can get done as well pretty easily. I don't think that's going to be too much from an extension perspective. As great as Alex Singleton has been, I do think the Alex Singleton, I think that can be you can replace Alex Singleton. Again, great guy. He'll rack up a lot of tackles. And he's good when he's on the field. But I do think the Broncos can serve well with an upgrade at the inside linebacker position.
Yeah, I agree. And you think about last season, how good this defense was, and kind of inexplicably, it's taken a notch even higher in 2025. And I think a big reason for that is they were able to only really add to the equation. They didn't really lose anybody. And Zach Allen talked about that doing a charity deal over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
He said, quote, in regards to, hey, you guys are 9-2 at the bye. Did you expect this? Did you expect to be as dominant a defense as you are? And he said, quote, no, I mean, we knew we had high expectations for ourselves, obviously, given how last year went. And we only really added this offseason. We didn't lose too much. So that's always kind of special. And I think to your point, Ron, that's important in terms of, man, look how much better even they've been this season. Like, if you can, while Bo Nix is still on that rookie deal, you invest, you double down, because you can see, like, this is a team that is now, I mean, look, the murmurings around Denver started when Sean Payton began trying to speak it into existence, but we're all now, I think, pretty fairly buying into the Super Bowl possibilities. And with Bo Nix still a couple more 2-3 years left on his rookie deal, man, you've got a window. So boy, oh boy, double down. And by order of priority, I'm right there with you. John Franklin Myers, Malcolm Roach, and Alex Singleton. I think it comes down to next offseason, they're going to decide, do we bring back Singleton for like a 1 year going? I mean, he's 32, right? Like he's getting up there. God bless him. He's a team captain. That's one thing we do have to keep in mind, how he's viewed in that locker room, which is also usually, Ron, a pretty good reflection of how the brass views a guy. He is a team captain. So I could be wrong, but I think that it comes down to, Ron, the Broncos go, all right, do we bring back a soon to be 33-year-old Alex Singleton, or is still in his basically mid-20s Justin Sternad, especially with how well Sternad has played this season when his number's been called?
Yep, I agree. And I think that's what it's going to boil down to. And you're right. Sternad has came in and he's just been tremendous alongside Dre Greenlaw. So another name here, Chad, and Ronk brought it up, Jaquan McMillan. That's another one as well.
Well, but he's a restricted free agent for what
restricted free agent.
So he'll get the tender.
Get tender, yeah. So I know he'll get the tender, but I think given kind of how he's played, they may want to look at kind of maybe doing that deal a little sooner as well. But yeah, I know the tender will come.
I mean, going into the season, and good call on that, Ronk, but going into this season, think about this, Ron. It's kind of crazy. Jaquan had become almost an afterthought. Everyone was just projecting Jahdae Barron as the new starter. And boy, oh boy, isn't it nice to have them both, right? Because like Pat Surtain, that's the one kind of knock that a critic could throw at Surtain, is availability. He has missed games over the years, which it's pretty hard to avoid that playing the game of football. But this season, man, look, I don't know that Jim Leonard could have done any better getting that cornerback room ready to overcome the loss 3 games that it's been without PS2. I mean, Jahdae Barron playing on the boundary, as VJ was talking about. We'll get to all this stuff. In base, Jaquan in the nickel, just making huge plays. Let's take a second real quick, though, Ron, and say hi to everybody. We got the Papa Bear that jumped in early before we even went live. Thank you, my friend, saying good evening, Broncos country, 13-4 plus. I'll throw that one extra plus in. Hashtag God bless the USA. It's great to see one of our core Super Chat superstars, Mount Rushmore. Hope you're doing well, brother. Lady D jumping in off the top rope. Well, first of all, she's gifting $10 MHH memberships to folks in the chat, which is so kind. We love you. Thank you, Lady D.
Thank you,
And then also a Top Rope super chat where she's saying, evening, Chad, Ron, and Broncos country. Glad we signed Will Lutz to 3 more years. I'm hoping the owners give a huge payday to keep VJ. All right, she's opening the door for us to get into the VJ thing. I think, though, VJ will take a head coaching position. Super proud of our Broncos. Knicks for 6. Hashtag Broncos country. Lady D, I hope you know we do not take you for granted. We appreciate you so much and value your takes and your contributions to this living and thriving MHH community. So thank you, my friend. Ron, by the way, it's a little peccadillo. So as guys who cover the team, when we're writing articles, we have to be very careful about players' name spellings. And in the case of Will Lutz, Lutz isn't that big of a deal, but he spells Will with 1 L. So the other day yesterday, in fact, Ron, this is the first time I'd bothered to do this after, the 3 years he's been here. I'm writing up the news of his extension. And I went to his wiki to remind myself of what year he got his Pro Bowl with the Saints, right? So I'm there and I go, it just dawned on me. I'm like, his name is Will with 1 L. I wonder. And I went and looked. It's William spelled the way you expect it to be spelled, William. And yet he decides to just kind of throw a wrench in everybody's day by, I'm going to go 1 L. So for what it's worth. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. VJ. So this is something that's been a growing thing, Ron. I'm about to serve it over to you. Is the idea that, we know that VJ is going to have some head coaching opportunities, but perhaps the Broncos can throw a bag at him to keep him in Denver and keep this defense fully intact. What say you?
Yeah. It really depends on what VJ wants to do. From kind of what I can tell, Chad, looks like he's open definitely to taking another head coaching job, but I think it's just going to depend on the situation for the next team. When he was in Denver the first go round, he just really wasn't given a fair shot. So it's really going to depend on that. And the Walter Penner group, they can hopefully keep him around, throw the bank at him to make him stay, because what he's done last year and this year, Chad, with this defense has just been tremendous. Yep. Now, obviously, you have Jim Leonard that can kind of come in and fill it, obviously, if he does take. So I don't think it's going to be too big of a deal, given what they have on the coaching staff to kind of help replace Vance Joseph. But man, I just feel as though if you can keep him around, and given his leadership, and of course those relationships he's built with the entire defense around within this window as we're talking, I just think that'll be great for this team.
I agree. And I think when the Broncos very first hired him as head coach, we heard all this leader of men stuff, and when the results weren't there, I think people began to resent the term because it seemed like the team wasn't bought in. How good of a leader could he be? This and that and the other. Yeah. But as things become more clear as time marches on. There's a reason for the saying hindsight is 20/20. And if you look back on things, he had a tough situation. He's a defensive-minded coach, expected to win in an AFC West without a franchise quarterback. And as he talked about, I can't remember if he mentioned this in the Schrager interview, Ron, but he talked about it in a previous interview with someone from the press, where he said he felt like he was really disappointed to be fired, because he really felt like in that final season, 2018, they were beginning with, and remember, that was the Case Keenum year. They were beginning to kind of unlock something, turn a corner. And so when he left, he just felt a lot of unfinished business, so to speak. And I think now there's a long-winded way of saying, to your point, the leader thing, that when you look at what he's done and you hear how his players talk about him and you hear how he talks about his players, I mean, listening to him on Schrager's show pick a name, and not even his players on his unit, but even like Bo Nix, it's said with almost like a paternal kind of pride, like a father talking about his son, like it's very clear not only how much pride he takes in his players, how much he cares about them, but you can see, Ron, that is reciprocated. And look, Jim Leonard would be a new thing. I think he's probably a defensive coordinator in waiting if it doesn't happen for him in Denver with the departure possibly of VJ. It probably is only a matter of time, but that leadership thing is not something I think that should ever be dismissed again when it comes to Vance Joseph. And we need to keep in mind, because we're seeing it, how important it is to the product on the field.
Yep, I agree. So again, I just hope the Walter Penner Group can see, and again, I know they see kind of what's going on with this defense, how it's taking shape, and what Vance Joseph has been able to do in his tenure. And I just wouldn't want that that particular coach to leave, given what he's already established. And as I mentioned, I'm going to stress, it really depends on where he goes. I know there's rumors out there with him being possibly connected to a few teams, but Chad, I do think right now it would serve this team well. It would serve the Penner Group well to just have him stay on for a few more years. So again, hopefully they can take one or two cracks at this thing to get this Super Bowl. Hopefully for multiple Super Bowls within this window.
Amen, brother. And let's see that wealth of the Walton Penner Group, the wealthiest ownership in North American pro sports. Let's see it serve their team, because it can help with regard to the salary cap in terms of like cash, having the cash on hand for bonuses and stuff like that. But really in the coaching hires is where, and coaching contracts is where it can make the biggest difference. So Lady D, we'll see how it shakes out, but we're right there with you in hoping that some conversations like that take place after the season, or maybe even before, because the conversation is going to be starting in January. Now, depending on how deep the Broncos go into the playoffs, that could also, Ron, affect whether and how he gets a job, because in some cases, the guys that go all the way to the Super Bowl, like, teams don't like to have to wait that long if they can avoid it. They like to have their guy by the third week of January in a perfect world, but the good teams will wait for the right guy. So anyway, thank you again, Lady D. I'm going to just some quick hellos here. Big Ern's checking in, not only on YouTube, but also on Facebook. Good to see Big Ern in the house. To some awesome members like the Ronk checking in. Good evening, Chad and Ron on Orange and Blue View. M. Blex is here to party. We were just partying with him 3-4 weeks ago, however long it's been now. Good to see you, pal. And Ronk's reminding everybody, while you're with us, hit those thumbs up and subscribe to the Mile High Huddle podcast on YouTube. Become a Mount Rushmore supporter. We need you. That AKA Chad. Yes, we do need you guys. And we need the Mile High Dutchie as well. Albert Knoppers in the house. Howdy, y'all. It becomes really annoying that when other teams end up with similar scores, i.e. Bills, Texans, other teams are good and the Broncos are rubbish. Yeah, it's really weird how it works out. I mean, charge it to the game. When it's the Broncos, Ron, it's like, oh, I don't know how much of that has to do with Sean Payton, the perception that his offenses should be Star Wars numbers every single game. I don't know, but it is annoying. I'll agree with the Mile High Dutchie on that, Ron.
Yeah, it's Mile High Dutchie. It is what it is. I see it all the time where, other teams, like you talk about Josh Allen, how he looked against the Texans, and, the victory for us, Chad, against the Texans looks amazing.
Yeah.
And it also just speaks to how important coaching is. And I think you see that in the Texans game against the Bills, how they looks like the offensive line was just getting manhandled. The Bills offensive line was getting manhandled by Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. Yep. But Broncos only surrendered. Bo Nix only had one sack, I think, for like 2 yards. So it just kind of goes to show you how coaching really matters and how Sean Payton and the staff plan for, the offensive line to contain the defensive line of the Texans, because that's
what did BJ, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, and it just made me think of something BJ said, but it was the other way around about the Broncos rush containing mobile quarterbacks. So sorry for interrupting. Continue as you are.
No, so I was just saying, how the coaching really matters, but I think it goes back to, a lot of people aren't high on Sean Payton, and they still want to be correct on their pre-draft assessment of Bo Nix.
There it is. That's really the bottom line, guys. And by the way, real quick, Mblex, I saw this, and then the very first thing that went to my mind is on rock and then the next thing rock and roll. So
Rock and roll.
we're sharing a brain there, brother. Big Earn says A for defense. Okay, well, yeah, we'll get into the grades. A for offense, A for special teams, A's all around. Okay, got it. We're going to get into our grades. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. Mike, good to see you on YouTube, big dog. Mike S-48. We need you. Become a member, brother. We need you in the fold. Mblex says Singleton player coach incoming. Could be. He's getting up there, man. He's old and in NFL years, he's old. So it would be cool if when he does decide to hang it up, that he becomes a coach. We'll see. William says, we went from telling VJ, don't let the door hit you, to begging him to stay. And isn't it sweet? I mean, who doesn't love, and good to see you, William, an awesome redemption story, Ron? And especially I don't know, listening to him talk to Peter Schrager and just, man, it feels almost poetic how the tables have turned, so to speak, for VJ. And I'm happy for him because I always felt like he was a really good guy in a bad situation. Now, I think back, the one little thing that makes me go, is VJ, I won't say he was complaining in these interviews that he didn't have a quarterback. It was more just kind of pointing to the fact that they didn't have a franchise guy. And yet, John Elway talked about in a recent, it was whatever it was, last offseason. I can't remember what show he was on. It was also in his book. But that the reason the Broncos took Bradley Chubb in 2018 and passed on any of those first-round quarterbacks, which within their reach, they could have drafted Josh Allen. They could have drafted Lamar Jackson. Am I missing one? Either way, either of those two guys would have been great. But the reason why it wasn't Josh Allen, despite the Broncos' heavy interest in him, I mean, they spent a lot of time 2 hours north up there in Laramie scouting him. They didn't take him. And according to Elway, it was because, quote, I'll paraphrase, he could not get the coaching staff to buy into Allen with him. He couldn't get them to share a brain. And so 2 years removed from having that same situation where Kubiak didn't share a brain with him on Lynch, and the whole Lynch pick blew up in his face, he decided, all right, we'll just take who we think is the best defensive player. So it makes me wonder, did VJ really not like Josh Allen, or was it maybe the offensive coaching staff didn't like Josh Allen? Makes you wonder.
Yep, it does. It does. And I do think it's probably that offensive coaching staff. And I think even if it would have been nice to have gotten Allen, but I think given kind of how that offensive coaching staff was, I'm just not sure if they would have been well equipped there to even develop, because people forget, Josh Allen didn't come in the league, throwing these bombs and being the quarterback that he is now. So it took some development. And I just don't think at that time, Chad, the Broncos kind of had the staff to help Allen develop.
Great point.
And that's not to say that Allen, couldn't have been great for the Broncos down the line, but I just think at that time, I don't think it would have been good.
I'm trying to remember. Was it Billy Musgrave? Was he the OC? Let me see. Yeah, it was Bill Musgrave.
Bill Musgrave. Yep.
And so makes you wonder. But I agree with you. You think, even if they had drafted an Allen or Lamar, did they have the offensive vision / coaching acumen to get out of him what the Bills were able to within about a 2 or 3 year window? He hit critical mass. But we got Tucson Phil jumping in also. We'll grab this one from Tucson Phil, and then we'll start talking about some grades. It says, you guys think, and thank you for being with us on Facebook tonight, Big Dog, crucial member of the community on Facebook. Do you guys think we will pick up any players during the bye? So, Ron, up to this point, it's all been like the players are gone. They're doing that. Even VJ, during that interview, he wasn't in Denver. Where he mentioned he was he in? I can't remember where he mentioned where he was. Anyway, he might have been in Denver. I might be confusing it with the Riley Moss interview that I watched. Anyway, the point being, everybody's kind of been away from the building. Maybe not the coaches, so I take that back. But everybody comes back next week. They usually do their workouts on Tuesday. But into the thicket of this conversation comes Brandon Cooks, whom the Saints released, and he's out there. So we'll see if he gets claimed on the waiver wire. I don't know if he will. But the Broncos, near as I can tell, based on the new rules and relative to the waiver wire, they're dead last on waiver wire priority because technically they have the best record in the NFL, number 1 seed in the AFC, and no NFC team yet has 9 wins. So they could get a crack at claiming him or letting him pass through and then trying to negotiate with him to come in and play. But what's your answer here for Phil?
Yeah, that's a good question, Phil. I'm not sure. Just given
and that running back from Houston.
That's where I was headed. Dameon Pierce. You took the words out of my mouth, Chad. That's who I'm interested. And I actually tweeted, Chad. I said, Bronco him expeditiously. That was my tweet. Because at this point, the Broncos definitely need, help at running back, given, what's happened with J.K. Dobbins. And, that game against the Chiefs, again, it was good to see Jaleel out there. But you need more than that. And I went back and watched some of the Dameon Pierce highlights when he was in Houston. I think his rookie year, he had like 900 yards.
Yep.
So if they can land him some way, somehow, Phil, I think that's how I would prioritize. I think he's more of an immediate need. I did see the Brandon Cooks. I'm not so much on the Brandon Cooks waiver. Because I do think with this crop of receivers what the Broncos have, I will want to see more Mims out there, Chad.
Yeah.
With Bryant, I think they can do well with what they have at receiver, but I think the running back Dameon Pierce should be a player that the Broncos are interested in.
Agreed 100%. And exactly. So Dameon Pierce, he entered the league 2022 with the Texans as a 4th-round pick out of Florida. His rookie year rushes in 13 games for 939 yards. So he was like basically turned in like a 1,200-yard performance as a rookie if he had appeared in all 17. And then the next year he had a little bit of injury issues, 400 yards. And each year it's just kind of diminished as his role has receded. But he's got enough sand, so to speak, in his drawers that it kind of ticks a box that the Broncos are missing. So he's 5'10", 215 pounds. And look, RJ, as Sean Payton said, at 5'8", 205, he's quote unquote built to last. But I don't think he's quite ready to carry the load. And it's not that he was carrying the whole load against the Chiefs. He had 11 carries. Jaleel had 6, but his average, RJ's, was woeful, guys. Like when you're averaging sub 3 yards per carry, it's an issue. And I just don't think the Broncos currently have the stable to really lean on their run game moving forward. And you're going to need to be able to do that, Ron, down the stretch. I mean, not to say the playoffs, etc. So just like Brandon Cooks, Dameon Pierce will have to pass through waivers. I would be shocked, especially considering he's playing on his rookie contract still, he doesn't get claimed well before the Broncos. If he makes it to 32, I would be even more shocked if the Broncos didn't claim him.
Yeah, I agree. But and then we looked at the running back options. As I said, if he does get claimed, the running back options out there that are free agents, and it's just not a good list. So, you're hoping, get lucky. If not, maybe looking for other running backs to get waived, to get released. But yeah, it's kind of slim pickings right now, unfortunately, at the running back crew.
All right, let's guys, keep any questions, comments, supers, keep them coming. We will get to them, but we did title this episode around grading the Broncos positional groups at the bye. And I wrote about this today, big long piece over at milehighhuddle.com. Feel free to go read it. But we'll go back and forth. And I think, Ron, a lot has I'll just speak for myself. When I was going through these grades, the fact that the Broncos are 9-2 and are still riding an 8-game winning streak factored in heavily. In other words, maybe some grades that would have been a little bit lower, I gave certain units benefits of the doubt just by virtue of how the team has performed as a collective. And that starts with, and probably none more so than, the quarterback position. So Bo Nix, 9-2. Sean Payton says that it's his job to win. People say that wins are not a quarterback stat. In a technical sense, perhaps they're not. In a real sense, they very much are. Quarterbacks are judged, Ron, on whether they win or lose. In Bo Nix's case, he's sitting here with the 11th most passing yards currently, 2,421. He's tied for the 4th most passing touchdowns with 18. Look, he's had his ups, he's had his downs. I gave him a B.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, a B. And I know everyone's going to point to the footwork. We all know how skittish in the pocket, and that's definitely a concern. But I do think this past weekend, Chad, he really looked. I think this was the best I've seen Bo play this past weekend. He really went in and made some corrections and looked like a very much improved quarterback. Obviously, that something else that goes into this grade, Chad, the clutch factor.
Yep.
Those game-winning drives, that fourth quarter, that's Bo's quarter, and you have to, he's pulling his team coming back from behind, getting them in field goal range or getting touchdowns. That's something with him. So I think for that alone, that's where the grade of B comes in for me for Bo. I definitely agree with you on the grade.
Well said in terms of factoring the clutch factor into the grade, and it's a great way to say it. All right, we move on to running backs. I gave this. Now, look, obviously this isn't a full season grade because we got 6 games left to play, but this grade is obviously heavily weighted by the fact that J.K. Dobbins was a dominant player when he was with the team. He's only been gone one week. And it's also weighted, Ron, by the fact that RJ Harvey was really thriving and shining as a compliment, not as the guy, as a compliment. Yes, his yards per carry average, when you minus his 2 runs of 50 and 40 yards, leave much to be desired. But his impact out of the backfield as a receiver, I give the running backs an A. And the only reason it's not an A plus is because of the RJ Harvey rushing average when you minus the 50 and the 40-yard carries.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I agree. An A. And you mentioned J.K. Dobbins is the reason for this A. He was the top before he went down, top 5 rusher. The Broncos were a top 5 rushing unit.
Yep.
And he was, he was the primary reason for that. RJ Harvey has been good. Again, you would like to see a little more on that, yards per carry, but I know he's slowly coming along, and we'll see how it shakes out. But I definitely agree. I think an A for the running back is definitely a solid grade, and I do agree.
All right, now we get to the first position group that does not have a passing grade, for me anyway, and that's tight ends. And look, this has been a weakness for the team. We'll call it a vulnerability for a few years now. And the hope was that Evan Ingram was going to at least raise the ships. And I think it has to a point. His receiving, the way teams do kind of fear him a little bit, has helped. But he hasn't been that force multiplier that I was hoping for. And overall, it's really piss poor blocking from the unit. Mercedes Lewis comes in by way of the practice squad the last 3 weeks. And although I do think he has helped in terms of the blocking with his minimal snaps, he's had a few penalties that kind of what's a good way of putting it, that kind of negated much of that positive impact. Adam Troutman, great locker room guy, kind of a glue guy. You need those type of guys, but he's a straight up liability when he's on the field as a blocker. And with Nate Adkins, Ron, missing so much time this year with 2 different injuries, that has really, really hurt them. I've given this unit a D.
That's fair. I will C minus with my grade for the tight end, given the reasons that you laid out. I did like, again, I know it hasn't really panned out, but I did like that they at least attempted to help out, with signing Mercedes Lewis.
Yep.
And to kind of support with the Nate Atkins injury. But Nate Atkins has been pretty solid when he's the number of games he's been in.
Yes.
And for me, Evan Ingram at the start he's kind of failed to launch that. Now again, you've seen some moments from Evan Ingram, but that consistency just isn't there. He's kind of not what you were hoping from the position. So yep, C minus for me.
All right, wide receivers. This one might be a little bit controversial, but I gave the wide receivers a C plus, and the reason mainly that I hinge my grade on and my argument here tonight is the drops. The Broncos have the second most drops in the NFL currently with 26. Most of them obviously coming at the wide receiver position. And it's one of those things where it giveth the position and it taketh away. So, for example, last week, Troy Franklin, couple of gnarly drops, but then he kind of redeems himself with 2 baller catches, especially that last one run late that helped seal that final kick from Will Lutz. But it's been a slightly lower production passing offense, just the way these games have unfolded for the Broncos. So I do take that into consideration as a little bit of a saving grace, so to speak, for the grade. But I can't get over these drops. 26 drops. I give them a C plus, but I'm open to anyone else's, including yours, obviously here, Ron, who might have a bone to pick.
Nah, that factored heavily into mine as well. I gave him a C. Just because, yeah, the drops were the main issue, but also I just haven't seen as much involvement from Sutton like I wanted to see.
Yeah.
And again, I know teams now are doubling him, they're game planning for him, so you have to take that into consideration. But I think that factors in, and also, Chad, just some of the usage. You want to see more from Pat Bryant. Now, again, I know they're doing that a little bit more so now, but you would have loved to see that a little bit earlier in the season. So again, hopefully more Pat Bryant, more going back to what you know with Cortland Sutton. And if they can clean up the drops, and again, I know the whole team is penalized, that they get penalties across the yin yang. I think that'll help them as they move forward.
All right, we move on to the offensive line, and it would have been really easy to just give him an A plus all around. I mean, Bo Nix remains the second fewest, not grammatically correct, but second fewest sacks allowed this season, behind only the Seattle Seahawks. Up until he went down, they were blocking for a top 5 rusher. I gave him an A, and the only reason it's not an A plus is the penalties, which they've contributed, Ron, their fair share to the Broncos. I think if they're not 32nd, they're 31st in terms of penalties, basically still leading the league. I give him an A. Garrett Bowles, he's in the running for the brand new Protector of the Year award. I think he's going to get his first ever, finally, and much well-deserved Pro Bowl nod. He's a lock for one of the 2 All-Pro teams. Miners has turned it around, turning in that all-pro caliber impact for basically the last month. So the only thing that really detracts here is, again, the penalties. I give him an A.
Yeah, and this also, I give him the same grade, Chad, an A. And also, everything you said was perfect. I'm just going to add what factored into mine heavily was the depth, and we're seeing the depth on display. With Throckmorton coming in at times, playing a few snaps, Alex Palczewski coming up, stepping in well at left guard. So yeah, I definitely agree. This unit has been amazing protecting Bo, and they've been great in run and pass blocking.
All right, let's just take a quick pause before we get to the defense here and just reflect, see what everyone else is thinking on some of these grades. So we're seeing the Ronk saying a B for Bo Nix, and Blex a B for Bo Nix, Lady D saying B plus for Bo. I love it. Ronk, A plus for Dobbins. Yeah, for sure on Dobbins. Lady D says B plus for Harvey and the rest of the backs. Let's see. Tight ends, Lady D saying C minus. Mike saying a C. And for what it's worth, Quentin, a dear member, says RJ, I believe, will get better. He's one of my guys. I was happy to get. I agree. He will. He will. At tight end, C from Ronk. OLs are getting an A as well. So let's see. Wide receivers, B from Mike, C from Cairo, or a C minus, C plus from Lady D. So just and Mblex is saying no, D for drops. You make me laugh, making us laugh over here. And Quentin saying Bo gets a B plus from me. Okay, good. So we turn to the defense, and we'll start in the trenches. Defensive line. This is the first full A plus, and for me anyway. And I don't know how you could debate it. I mean, you got 6 sacks from Allen, I think 4.5 from JFM, and the season's not even done yet. And then, of course, the Broncos top 10, maybe even top 5. I'm not sure where they stand yet. I haven't gotten the game capsule yet for week 13 because we're not to week 13 yet. But this is just a dynamic, control the point of attack, whether it's against the run or rushing the passer. I give the Broncos defensive line through 11 games an A+.
Yeah, I'm A++. This is the best unit on the Denver Broncos without a doubt. I mean, we can go player for player, Chad. Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers, Malcolm Roach, even Uwazurike has taken a huge step. I just think this unit has done a tremendous job against the run, helping to lead the team in sacks. How can you give it anything but? So I'm right there with you. A+.
All right, we go to outside linebackers, and just like the D-line, they get an A+. Nick Bonito, Jonathan Cooper, of course, headlining the group. Those two have combined for 17 sacks already. And the one big difference I'll say, though, and I didn't factor this into my grade because it's been a little bit weird, is you're not seeing the high number of sacks from the backups this year that you saw last year. And by that, I'm reminding everybody, Dondre Tillman had 5 last season. So did Ellis. Both of them were rookies relative to the NFL. So the backups aren't quite turning in the same number of sacks, but that doesn't mean the pressures aren't there. They're still racking up an insane number of pressures when they're relieving Bonito and Cooper. And of course, Tillman leads the team with his 2 interceptions. So I give him an A+ all around.
Yeah, the big man with the picks. We're not differing much on these grades on defense. I'm also there with you. I mean, we already know what the 2 starting outside linebackers, what they represent. But yeah, just outside of the Tillman, Ellis, Q Robertson, the rotation has been great. And just how everybody has just chipping in and getting sacks. So yeah, I'm right there with you. A+.
Now, linebackers, it's a little bit different story, the inside linebackers, because the Broncos did not get Dre Greenlaw on the field as early as they had hoped, obviously. And Alex Singleton, returning from that torn ACL, took a little time getting up to speed. But they were saved by Sternad really showing that he's developed into a bona fide, I deserve to start guy. And Singleton, the last month before the really scary and unfortunate cancer diagnosis, had turned a corner. He was still the liability he's kind of always been in coverage, but as a sideline to sideline guy, as a leader on the field, green dot helmet on the helmet guy, Alex Singleton giveth more than he taketh. And overall, when you factor Greenlaw's back, Sternad has been, whether it's for Greenlaw in relief or in relief of Singleton, he's been an absolute blessing to this team. I give him a B.
Yeah, I think for me, B+ at the inside linebacker. Just because I think I put a little bit more weight on when Dre Greenlaw was out, how Sternad just came in and has been great. It's just good to see how he's been able to take his game on to the next level. That pick in the Giants game, just being there, getting the tackles. So I do think that factored in heavily. And again, when Dre Greenlaw did make his debut, I think it took that inside linebacker group to another level. So I think for me, the B+ is how I would grade that group.
Guys, we'll get to your grades. It's really interesting. Not everyone's sharing a brain with us on the inside linebacker, so it'll be fun to discuss that more with you guys. We move to the cornerbacks, and look, this has been, they faced some adversity, not only in the PS2 injury, but in Riley Moss. I mean, who under the sun, talking heads, I'm talking media, doesn't believe that Riley Moss is at least a little bit unfairly targeted? Like, he's got this reputation, and there's been way too many ticky-tacks that would not have been called, 9 out of 10 DBs in the NFL, but they're getting thrown on Riley, and yet they persevere, and he perseveres. To his credit, he stepped in as the number one cornerback without PS2, and he went 2 of those 3 games, for what it's worth. 2 of those 3 games, he did not have a penalty, the Texans game and the Raiders game. But oh boy, did the chickens come home to roost against the Chiefs with 2 costly PIs and then a defensive holding call that wiped a Jahdae Barron pick 6 off the board. So he even said after the game, look, it keeps happening. I got to take accountability and get to the bottom of it. I'm not going to point to the refs. I got to get to the bottom of this. So I think, though, the fact that PS2, his injury, in a silver lining kind of takeaway, has been actually a good thing for this team. Not that you want him off the field, but just that it's kind of forced these other guys to sink or swim on their own, wherewithal. You've seen Riley Moss rise to the occasion. You've seen Jaquan McMillan. Actually, I think it's Jaquan McMillan is how you say it. Definitely rise. I mean, historic impact last week against the Chiefs. 2 sacks, 1 interception. Never been done by a Broncos DB. And then, of course, Jahdae Barron, who Vance Joseph explained in that interview with Schrager, has been their outside boundary guy with Moss in base package. Then when they bring in nickel or dime or any other sub package, he kicks inside with McMillan, oftentimes to kind of shadow the tight end and be that tight end eraser. And then they bring in Chris Abrams-Drain to be the other boundary guy. So I think overall, man, this group has done a phenomenal job. I give them an A. The penalty thing, the only reason it's not an A+.
Well said. Well said. And A. I think it's unfortunate that Riley Moss gets picked on. I mean, even when PS2 was in the lineup, you're going to get the balls thrown your way.
Yep.
And it's even more evident now that PS2's out, that, he's getting them. But I think he's been able to do well and come back and withstand all that. It's just hate, just the amount of flack he gets for how he plays the position. He does need to clean up his technique. He does get a little handsy at times. But I think he's done well. And Chris Abrams-Drain has come in and done well. And you mentioned Jahdae, and nickel kind of being that tight end eraser. So, I think an A is kind of how I would also grade this group.
As it applies to the safeties, we got safeties and special teams, then we're done with the grades. So safeties, I think this tandem has been astoundingly good. If they get a little bit of luck from the injury bug, this is a safety tandem the Broncos can hang their hat on for years to come. The only thing that keeps this from an A+, these two, is the dropped interceptions from Hufanga, who, by the way, has become a bona fide weapon. Like, point to a safety this season in the NFL playing better than Talanoa Hufanga. I defy you. Like, he's so far this season, I think he's the best guy in the NFL. The only thing that you can really argue is just simply the lack of takeaways for the whole secondary, by the way, but specifically as it relates to the safeties, just because I think Eric tracked it. I think Eric said 10 dropped interceptions from Talanoa Hufanga. So, it's like, hey, I guess there's a reason he plays defense, right? But nevertheless, wow, what an impact player. I agree with Eric also that he has been Denver's best 2025 free agent acquisition. I give the safeties an A.
Agreed. And because of Talanoa Hufanga, I mean, he's all over the field, Chad. I mean, he's always near the ball. And he and Brandon Jones just make such a dynamic safety duo. You're right. I think he needs to start catching these these interceptions. Hopefully, in the playoffs, if balls are thrown his way, he can come down with them. But it's just, I think he and Dobbins have been the 2 best free agent signings this offseason. So, I agree with you.
Man, even if he caught half of them, right? Like, he'd have 5 picks. You think about it, like, he'd be in Defensive Player of the Year conversation. So, hey, man, whatever it takes, Huff, as they call him in the locker room, let's get some of those picks, baby, because that's the only thing. That's the only thing missing from the ingredient. All right, special teams, I vacillated on this one, Ron. I went back and forth. First, it was way worse than what I'm about to say. Then I made it maybe a little better, and then I thought on it a little bit more, and I arrived at a C. And look, the leverage penalty cost him a win. You got way too many penalties. You got one of the worst, for most of the season anyway, the worst kick return coverage unit, and they haven't been good on punt return coverage either. Um, Jeremy Crawshaw, despite some positives in terms of his kicks, punts inside the 10 and inside the 20, just too much inconsistency there for me to give him a really, truly passing grade, honestly. And that's something I'll disagree with Eric on maybe a little bit. He wrote some stuff about Crawshaw. I think it was either Friday or Thursday, ranking the draft picks this year. And I'm not here to like crap on him by any means because he's fighting through some stuff. But as a sixth round, as a drafted punter, expectations are quite a bit higher. And as someone who's seen him punt in person, I mean, he's a talented guy, and I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to end up becoming quite the weapon and a long-term guy in Denver. But I haven't been overly impressed yet by Crawshaw as a pro. And then, of course, not having Marvin Mims, Ron, for those couple of games, boy, oh boy, did it hurt the return units. Getting him back absolutely played a huge part in the Broncos beating the Chiefs. So thank God for that. The saving graces that keep this from being honestly an F, seriously, for me, Will Lutz being the clutch guy that he's been, and Marvin Mims when he's been on the field, which is most of the season. He's only missed 2 games. That gives them a C for special teams.
Yep, I went with C plus. And I think in my grade, Chad, the Will Lutz was kind of the biggest factor as to why it got to the plus. Just because he's been money with these kicks. Again, despite the coverage units, the penalties, some of the gas from Rizzy.
Yep.
It's been bad to start. Yeah, and it's gotten better. We did see, when Mims got back into the fold, it's got better this past Sunday. But I would say the plus comes from just Will Lutz, really, helping his team out and being clutch in those moments. So yep, C plus.
So there you have it, guys. Just a quick recap from what everyone else is saying here on the D line. Ronk saying A plus for OLB, DL A plus, A plus. But again, where our opinions diverge from the chat is we gave the ILBs more than a passing grade. We're in the Bs. Chat saying C minus, and I think it's fair. Friends can disagree, especially in good faith. Cornerbacks, we're seeing A's from folks. We're seeing B's, seeing B plus from Lady D. So kind of interesting. And then you get to safety, A plus for Hufanga. Safety, A for Max Rio. Good to see Max, a dear member. So kind of fun. Let's grab the super chat from Donald Olmstead jumping in. Good to see one of our dear members and superstars in the house. We appreciate your support, big dog. And by the way, we're at 52 minutes, so we're almost out of time. Donald says, good evening, guys. Since we're talking linebackers, will we ever see Drew Sanders again? I had high hopes for him watching him in the SEC. Inside linebacker is trending to an A for me with Greenlaw now at full speed. Agree on that last point 100%. I don't know. Like, I was expecting we would have seen Drew Sanders sooner than we have. Like, I was expecting we would have seen him probably like around the Cowboys game, if not the Texans game, but there's been hide nor hair seen of Drew Sanders relative to, the roster. And, I think that's a question that probably has to get asked to Coach Payton if he does a conference call Monday morning. If not, we'll have to wait till Wednesday to hear from him. But even by then, Ron, we may have an answer because if they start his clock, he'll show up on the practice report. Actually, do they have to start his clock? I'm trying to remember as a PUP guy. Or is he IR? Put a pin in that for a second. We might know Wednesday if he's coming back. But, what was it last year? He didn't come back till the final quarter of the season. So I don't know. Will we see him again? Yes. He's got one more year left on his deal. I'm hopeful still, but, I'm not exactly taken to the bank that we're going to see him much at all in 2025.
He's IR.
IR. Okay.
Yeah. And a great question, Donald. I mean, again, I thought he was going to, be out a few games. And yeah, and you're right, Chad, kind of come back near Giants, Cowboys. That's kind of what I was expecting. Yeah. He may have had, setback. Who knows there, but True. I had high hopes. I still do. I just don't know if he does come back, if he's gonna be long for Denver, just because he's been injured so much, he's missed so much time, and it's unfortunate, kind of given because he was such a great player
Yeah.
there at Arkansas. He was amazing, but we'll see how it shakes out, Donald. But yeah, I'm with you on the last one as well. Just what Dre Greenlaw, man, I'm telling you, he's just everything you expected um at the inside linebacker position. I mean, I think of a few plays, especially him helping out in that goal line stand against the Texans, being just near the ball at all times. He's just been such a great add as well in free agency.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. Hopefully we see Drew again because, yes, I agree 100%. Great player in college, and he's flashed impact as a pro. A guy that's just, Sean Payton described when we signed Hufanga, he described him as a first responder guy. Like he's the first guy there. And in a real world sense, he's the guy you call when you're broke down on the side of the road. He'll be the first guy there to help you type thing. And in a similar sense, Drew Sanders, always around the ball, nose for the ball, super freak athlete, just can't stay out of the injury bug's way. So that's a big part of it, unfortunately, in making it in the league. You got to have a little bit of luck. The ladies of MHH showing out tonight. We've heard from Deanna, and here is the Duchess, Michaela Parker, throwing down a very generous super chat. Mount Rushmore in the house tonight, multiple Mount Rushmores. Love you, Michaela. It's great to see you. She says, hiya, fam. Much love. What do you think about our giving Pierce a try? So we touched on this kind of briefly earlier, but the Texans did decide to part ways with Dameon Pierce. Ron and I both like the idea, but he's got to get to him on the waiver wire, and that's not certain because, like in Cooks's case, right? Brandon Cooks, the Saints moved on from him. He hits the wire, and even though he renegotiated his contract so that he would be a little bit easier to release, thus also making him a little bit more attractive to waiver teams, he still is making probably $2 or $3 million still left on his deal this season. Is he going to pay that to your fourth or fifth wide receiver, so to speak? Whereas Pierce, he's on the final year of his rookie deal, and I can't imagine he's making more, Ron, than about $1 million. So and that's knowing that a good chunk of that's already been paid out with 11 games in the books, 12 now for the Texans. So if the Broncos have a shot at him, I would be stunned, Ron. 5'10", 215. I'd be stunned if they don't pick him up.
Yeah, Michaela. Again, as Chad mentioned, we are all for giving Dameon Pierce a try. Again, it's going to be hard given that Broncos are near the end there as far as the waivers, but if they can somehow get lucky and get him, I think he would be great. And again, Pierce is the type of back.
Wait. She may be reporting some news.
Oh, some
I
news
might have missed
possible.
this. Let's see.
Yeah, let's see. Did he pass? And I may miss this too.
Hold on. Dameon Pierce. I don't know if enough time has passed yet. Maybe pass waiver wire. Let's see. Okay, so hold on. Let me see what this is citing. This is AI. I hate to cite AI. Here's a link. What is it to? Okay. So this is from, thank you, Michaela. This is from Yahoo. Let's see. On Friday, NFL Transaction Wire confirmed what many expected. Pierce officially cleared waivers. So thank you, Michaela. That being said, hey, Broncos, do something about that. Look, this is not an indictment. And again, thank you, Michaela. This is not an indictment on RJ. But I think it's pretty clear he's not quite ready. His vision is not there. His patience, his understanding of how blocking needs a little bit of time to set up in the NFL. All that stuff, on one hand, you can argue, well, how's he ever going to learn it if he doesn't get the time on task? And that could honestly be the Broncos' perspective, where they're just like, look, we know it's not going to be perfect. It's going to still maybe take a little time, but we need him to get those reps so he can get through this. But at the same time, Ron, this next 6 games is going to dictate AFC seeding, and then you get to the playoffs. You have to have a run game threat. And even though RJ's always a threat to take one to the house, he's not a guy that the trench is really fearing. He's not a guy that creates on his own between the tackles yet, like you saw from Dobbins. I mean, even Dobbins' first touchdown as a Bronco, 19-yard run, he created that. He got through the hole and wiggled through and boom, stiff arm a guy, and he's scoring. And you're just not seeing that yet from RJ. But I'd like to see Pierce, nevertheless, even if he's a practice squad guy, Ron, that you call up to the roster a couple times.
Yeah, and thank you, Michaela, for giving us that news. We greatly appreciate it. And yeah, they need a power back. And again, not to say that RJ can't eventually get to that, Chad, but you're not seeing it right now. And I think that's okay. He's a rookie, so he has to slowly get integrated, with the team and how the NFL works and some of the power gap and blocking schemes. And I think, right now, how he's being used, I think it's good. Sometimes he can go in, get a few tough yards. Obviously, him catching the ball has been great for the Broncos. But man, I'm telling you, in this next 6-game stretch and in the playoff run, you're going to need that power back to just get you those yards and grind out the clock. And what would be better than having a Dameon Pierce who can do that? I mean, he did it in his rookie year at Texans. So if he can come in, I think that'll be good for this team.
All right, guys. We got to hustle. We're almost out of time. Michaela jumping in again saying, plus we don't have a big back. Nothing wrong with RJ. Yes, and agreed. And that's the thing, is he checks a box, Pierce, that you don't have. Like, again, Sean Payton said RJ from a size perspective is quote unquote built to last, but you need that bruiser, move the pile guy. This time of year right now, it'd be really handy to have Audric Estime, but of course that didn't work out. So anyway, thank you so much, Michaela. We love you. Lady D also jumping in again to say, if Pierce is available, Broncos need to snatch him up. Awesome catch, Michaela. Yes, indeed. Props to you, my friend. Go Broncos. Yeah, so there you have it. He's out there, but here's the question. Why was he released in the first place? And you got to ask, because of all the factors I mentioned earlier about his relatively inexpensive remaining contract, why no one picked him up on waivers. Like, what's the inside baseball scuttlebutt in the NFL on Dameon Pierce? And I don't know exactly. I'll have to do some digging on that and get back to you guys, but it seems to be staring the Broncos in the face.
Yep. Agreed.
Does he fit the scheme? Well, he thrived in Pep Hamilton's offense as a rookie. When the Texans moved to more of a outside zone rushing attack, that's when he wasn't as effective. And the Broncos, they've worked some outside zone into the scheme, Ron, this year, but they're still more of a inside power kind of team. So I think he could work, and especially as a fallback option. Last word on that, Ron.
Yeah, I agree. I think he can come in. Again, given that outside scheme that they've kind of started to integrate, I think he can come in and be fine. I think he seems like the type that can work in any scheme, Chad. And again, I think the Broncos just need to try to do it. Again, even if it's just bringing him on the practice squad, see what he can do. But yeah, I think this running back group definitely needs a boost. And I think he can provide that.
All right, guys, a shout out, a mile high salute to the great Super Chat superstars, supporters, and members helping us keep the lights on tonight, like the Lady D throwing down from the Top Rope Plus membership. She's gifting in the chat. Love you. Thank you. Papa Bear, Tucson Phil on Facebook, Donald Olmstead, the Duchess, Michaela Parker with multiple supers, and also helping us rectify the record. He had passed through waivers, had Dameon Pierce. So really cool. Thank you, everybody. Connect with Ron, guys, on X. at Ron White NFL. You can find me at Chad and Jensen. Also, listen up. You want to connect with the Mile High Huddle at Mile High Huddle. Connect on Facebook with the main podcast accounts on Facebook, Mile High Huddle Pod, and then also the main account, Mile High Huddle, easy to find. You want to get a hat, you want to get a t-shirt, head over to mhhmerch.com. Helps keeps the lights on as well. And then also our Instagram following has more than doubled since the season began, so thank you. We've been cranking out a ton of unique content just for Instagram. So head on over there if you haven't yet and give us a follow at mile_high_huddle and leave us a 5-star review if you are listening on Apple or Spotify. And even if you're not, helps us reach more people. And last but not least, guys, subscribe, like, share. You know the drill. Every little bit helps. And at the very least, for those of you who are watching after the fact, comment. We need those comments. It helps in the algorithm, helps us grow and reach more like-minded Broncos fans just like you. And Ron, once again, we're keeping it rolling on Orange and Blue View together while Dylan figures his stuff out. And it's been a pleasure. So thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. It's always good to have you, Chad. I greatly appreciate you tuning in, joining me. And it's been great talking to you guys, as always, every Saturday. So thank you. Thank you all for joining us. Greatly appreciate it.
All right, guys. We'll see you tomorrow at MHH. For Ron, I'm Chad. Go Broncos.
Go Broncos.